As you plan your implementation, Instrumental would like to share ideas and thoughts about what to expect and prepare for. Our CEO, Eric Pratt, shared his thoughts on successful activations in a recent industry webinar. You'll find value as you prepare your team to level up through change.
I just want to share a couple of best practices today for some of the stuff, like how you get from where you are to where you want to go and how you activate some of these tools. And I will start with certainly going through how do you get the foundation set up, give you the foundation to build upon. How do you make sure that your team can adopt this stuff successfully and actually action it for good? I think one call out and summary that I would notice here is a lot of this is about efficiency and effectiveness of your team and ultimately serve your members and customers better. So how do we get there? You get there through really a successful adoption and building acumen with your team to know how to adopt it. And then finally, once you get the foundation in place and you get your team in there and using it, how do you actually measure performance and measure success? So we're going to go through each one of those, and I'm going to start with foundation. All right, so one of my big pro tips here is to take some inventory. A lot of what needs to be done on the front side is a little bit of a gap assessment to be able to dig in and take inventory of where you stand now and what your gaps are. But really, I think part of that gap analysis is what needs to go, what data needs to sink in what directions. All right, so once you get through some of that gap analysis and do a little bit of an internal assessment, then it's time to get serious about how do you implement these tools and get them activated. And the thing I will preach more than anything is taking a phased approach. And this phased approach can look different for different organizations at different level of maturities and stuff like that. You can activate these tools quickly. You don't need a 12, 18-month implementation plan before you can start putting some of these fantastic tools and technologies at your team's fingertips. So I would suggest some prioritization of how do you get some quick wins? How do you get to an MVP scenario that once that MVP is in place, your team can begin using those tools and leverage them to gain some of that efficiency and increase their productivity while we work to refine the system, to integrate further, to bring even more layers of capabilities to your fingertips. My advice to you is make sure you start light and don't delay the ability for your team to activate for value. Okay, so we've got an implementation plan. Maybe we ran some of that fast activation. We're getting some of these phenomenal tools in your team's fingertips and they're starting to use them. How do we get them to adopt? One of my big keys is taking a bottom-up approach, build for the users, don't build for the organization. I think you will find that if you start by empowering your users first, inevitably the organization will get what they want in the end. And I'll show you how we can get that done. I think change management is the most critical piece here. This is, I know that change can be scary and there can be resistance and modernization and all this technology, AI, oh my, how do I handle this stuff? I think a change management approach can be really, really effective. And I think that you will likely need some support from an implementation team like us executing change management. We've got all kinds of great strategies, tips, and formats to be able to walk through different training and adoption and reinforcement principles. But I also think there's some stuff that your team will want to prepare. And I would advise that, change management is top down and you really want leadership's involvement to help the organization understanding the why and the what's in it for them. And I really think it is smart to focus on what's in it for those users, how it's going to help their day. And when we're talking about sales, it's really all about help me sell more, right? Help me do more. I think a lot of people have a negative perception that modern systems are a burden on the user instead of a benefit to the user. And if you really focus on how this is going to make their job easier, make them go faster, and ultimately put more money in their pocket through increasing sales, that will be your winner. And then you've also got to be patient, but you need to be persistent. Embracing and the disciplines here will yield results. There are some lead measures that will, over time, drive the results you want. This isn't magic sauce. It's not an easy button. So let's be real intentional about how we communicate the change and how we stick with the team. Speaking of sticking with the team, I am a big proponent for the ADKAR model. If you're not familiar with the ADKAR model, it is a change management and adoption format and methodology I think could be very, very successful. I would caution you that it isn't like build all this system, invest in these tools, run a couple trainings, and send everybody on their way. I think it's really, really important to stand alongside the users and ensure successful adoption. And the ADKAR model for raising awareness, driving desire, building people's knowledge base and their abilities, and then constant reinforcement of best practices and the disciplines for success is a really, really good formula. And I would suggest that change management model include elements of ADKAR. Okay, so we've talked through implementation. We've talked through some of the keys to successful adoption by your users and teams. Now let's talk about some of the KPIs. And I think one of the things I will just say as an overarching comment, one of the phenomenal things about a modern CRM like HubSpot is its deep reporting capabilities. And we have so many different ways to visualize metrics. And I'll also say that, like, a lot of times with banks, credit unions, mortgage brokers, your data is desperate and it's spread all over, back to some of those implementation questions in your assessment. But we have the ability to enhance your KPIs and reporting for the entire organization, not just salespeople doing sales things. So the first report I'd like to share is a little bit more like organizational, with the proper integration between like a core banking system or maybe your loan origination system. We have the ability to bring in a lot of data. And as your salespeople are out there performing, we also have the ability to visualize some of these organizational KPIs. And this is some of the stuff that gets leadership real excited. This is an example of a dashboard that we built for a large bank that had some really specific KPIs that they want to see. You can see how we have lots of different visualization capabilities. You can dig into FDIC insured amounts and when are my loans going to be paid off and how many new CDs have I sold in a year. Some of those data points that are really important to your organization. Just understand that in a CRM like HubSpot, we have some really, really dynamic ways that we can build that data into reports. We have multiple ways that we can sort and filter that data over different time periods. We've got some great capabilities of like distribution. Even people that don't work in a CRM on a daily basis, we can put these reports in their inbox at any frequency you would like. Next report here is a little bit more like your active sales report. And from a sales manager perspective, maybe it's a regional manager or a branch manager, will have the opportunity to pull some of those visibilities in a team setting. So I can break that down by region or team or branch or any way you want. But I also have the ability to just, as a salesperson, understand like where does everything stand? How am I towards goal? What contacts should I work next? What's my next best action? And so there's a lot of different ways that we can pull insights and visibilities in front of individuals, in front of teams or regions, and in front of the entire organization. And I think putting some of these KPIs at your fingertips can be really, really powerful. The thing I want to leave you all with is this is actually achievable. It may seem a little bit like, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get there? I will say that change is difficult, but it is absolutely achievable. And I do believe that we can help you get there.